Hello, everybody. This is Tanika Steens, and I am your host for Mind Your Business. And tonight, my guest is Kirk Nurmi, and he rose to international prominence as the lead counsel for the infamous Jodi Arias. The stress of that case brought cancer into his life, and with cancer came big changes, a whole new life, a life wherein happiness is his beacon. With this beacon in view, Kirk has written for the New York Daily News, authored 8 books, has spoken all around the country, and in October of 2020, he debuted his new one-man show, Overcoming Jodi Arias. Kirk has also appeared on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, Court TV, Dr. Oz, The Mel Robbins Show, and The Today Show. He has also been featured in documentaries on Discovery ID and the Oxygen Network. Yet his most important work is as a personal assistant to his wife of 27 years and his 4-pound chihuahua. And tonight, he is my guest, Tanika Steens, the Mindful Coach. So welcome to Mind Your Business, Mindful Intentions, Nurture and Grow Your Business. So Kirk, welcome to the show. Please tell us again who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for adjusting your camera. I was afraid I was going to be talking to your ceiling all night.
No.
The bio kind of wraps it up. I was afraid I was going to be talking to your ceiling all night.
I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I'm trying to turn this thing down. There we go. All right. We're good. Go ahead.
All right. That probably freaks some people out. Here we go again. The bio kind of says it all. Most people know me from the Jodi Arias trial, where that was the big hullabaloo back in 2013 to 2015. What a lot of people don't know is in 2015, shortly after that trial, cancer entered my life. And I hit a really kind of a moment in my life, a changing moment, I guess you might say, where I really wondered whether I was going to go through chemotherapy or simply let cancer take its course because of what I'd been through in those 2.5 years with Miss Arias and all the infamy that brought upon me. And ultimately, when that shift occurred, I decided to get in the cancer chair because I wanted to live my life in a whole new way. I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to live my remaining years the way I had my prior 49 years. And that really came from confronting myself with a really important question I don't think too many of us confront ourselves with, and that is, am I happy? It's a question I certainly hadn't confronted myself with. Sometimes we just assume that we're happy because we've got a decent job and it was the major we picked in college when we were 18 or 19, whatever it was, right? But we don't really move forward and make that assessment. And sometimes maybe people get disenfranchised with their job and want to run out the clock to retirement, right? Run out and just work the last 10 years or whatever that might be. I have friends that are younger than me that have, 9-year retirement clocks because they're just not that happy in their job. And I figured if I was going to go through chemotherapy, that I was going to live with what I call joyful urgency instead of simply just living out the days, right? So I made the choice to go in the chemo chair. Like the bio says, I have written about 8 books since going into the chemo chair. I have become a public speaker. I no longer practice law. I asked for voluntary disbarment because I wanted out. I do the commentary. I've recently started acting. I've got some projects coming up. I've become part of a cast of a show called Radical Body Transformations, which airs on Amazon Prime. I'm down over 30 pounds, getting stronger, having fun with that, and learning about the connection really in a different way between that source energy and myself. And I think there's a lot I put in my book about defend your greatness and that, but I think I'm taking that to a different level. And probably most importantly, because I must have failed to update my my bio between the time I sent it to you and the time my anniversary passed. But my wife and I have now hit the 28-year mark as of a few weeks ago. So I'm 28 years married. And one of the other things I do, of course, is appearing on great podcasts like yours, so I can have great conversations with interesting people and mindful people, spiritual people. And so I'm looking forward to having that with you here today.
Well, great. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me. You've got a lot going on. And since the time of the trial till now, what did your spiritual life look like before that? And how much did it change after that?
Well, for the most part, I would kind of call my spiritual life non-existent. I mean, back in the early 2000s, early 2000s, I was reading Deepak Chopra. I was kind of getting there. I knew who Wayne Dyer was, right? But it was like one of those journeys that wasn't really complete. I maybe didn't. Sometimes we can understand things without fully digesting them, right? And maybe in my youth, I couldn't fully digest some of those realities. And, the one thing about the practice of law, and a lot of professions are like this, we see the worst in humanity played out for us every single day. I mean, cops see these things, nurses see these things, as doctors to some extent, right? And lawyers certainly as well, whether they're practicing criminal law like I was, or divorce, or that kind of thing. We see kind of the worst. And there wasn't a huge, strong spiritual connection. There was some, but like I say, it wasn't fully digested. And that began to happen when I made the choice to go through the chemo chair. I began to kind of feel that I had more of a mission. I mean, that's kind of why I made the choice. And when I say I feel like I had more of a mission, I mean that on a spiritual sense. And I started really kind of through the magic of YouTube, connecting with people like Kyle Cease, who's a great source of wisdom. He's a former actor who became more of a spiritual teacher. And then later on, I got to work with Dr. Sean Stevenson, who, if someone's not familiar out there, they should look him up on YouTube. He was a TED speaker. He was born with a brittle bone disease, and he was 3 feet tall in a wheelchair his whole life, and became a powerful speaker and figure, worked in the Clinton White House as an intern. And so I got to work with him on some of these things, on my spiritual growth and path. And meditation became more a part of my life as well. So now I'm very connected into that kind of life set, and feel like I try to follow what I might call my callings or my urgings, rather than simple that kind of traditional lifestyle that we all lead. We don't always put happiness as a priority in our world, right? We're kind of trained against, right? We're trained against this. We're trained to make money and have a family, and then happiness is going to be a byproduct of that stuff, right? Well, one of the things I did when I made that shift is I said, I'm going to make happiness the priority, and let those other things trail the happiness, and let them support the happiness. So I'm not doing a job I don't like so I can, work for the weekend, as it were, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
you think about it. I mean, you're talking about 5/7 of your life you're going to hate doing a job you hate simply to survive instead of thrive. So it's on thriving. It's that joyful urgency that I talked about before, living each moment and really embracing it, and having fun with it all. And that's really how I try to aim my life, and hopefully motivate people to do the same. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of obstacles in their life. And one of the things I say in my shows is, if I can overcome Jodi Arias and cancer, then you can overcome the things happening in your life. And that's kind of the mantra that I operate off of.
Absolutely. Now, how many cases had you tried up until before you got to that Jodi Arias trial?
Boy, I couldn't even tell you. Numerous, because ultimately in Arizona, you cannot be a capital defense attorney until you have a certain number of trials under your belt, major felony trials. You have to have practiced for at least 5 years. I had about 9 in before, roughly 9, before I was assigned the case as a public defender. Working in the capital unit. So, and you have to be approved by the state Supreme Court, that sort of thing, right? So they want Arizona and a lot of states now, since there were so many problems in the past with unqualified counsel trying cases, have always pretty strict regulations on what a capital defense attorney, what's required of a capital defense attorney before they can even step into that courtroom.
Now, what I want to get into is I don't think a lot of times people realize how much things can affect your life and can actually bring disease into your
Yeah.
life, stress and things like that. Would you mind talking about? I know you certain things that you can't go into, but do you mind talking about like how stress can cause disease and affect your mindset and your body and break that down and how it affected you in that way? Do you think that's what caused your cancer and brought that onto your life?
Yeah, I have no doubt about it in my heart that I believe that the stress of that trial and everything that came with it was the reason cancer came into my life. Of course, with a lot of these things, we can't draw a direct link, right? So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if we fall and break our leg, we know why we broke our leg. There's a direct connection there. If you're a smoker, you get cancer, lung cancer, you can understand why, right? But there's a lot of studies, and they're all correlation instead of causation, related to stress and disease in the body. And, obviously, when we stress ourselves out, that's not the state we came into this world in. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
state we operate best in. Nobody operates best in stress, and it can cause disease. And one of the things, like, so my particular form of cancer was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood related cancer. And ultimately, my healthy cells began turning on themselves. And I think it was directly to the stress I was under, my unhappiness with the condition I was in. And it was a constant state of hypervigilance for 2.5 years. I mean, we have to remember that this trial, even though it's in our rearview mirror and everything, was something that was so worldwide in its appeal. I mean, I had threatening or nasty emails or social media messages from all over the world, from Australia, from Japan, from all over, and obviously more direct threats from the United States. And we had to have guards with us when we walked into the courtroom, that sort of thing. And the threats became very plentiful. I mean, my partner on the case, they found out where her kids went to grade school and threatened them. She had some FBI involved. So there's just a lot of things that were happening. And yeah, you become hyper vigilant. And what a lot of people don't know is, to make matters worse, is that this was a case I didn't want. I mean, I was assigned to it as a public defender, and I tried to leave the case behind when I left the public defender's office. I was ordered to keep it. So a lot of people believe that I was there for fame or money, or because I believed in Miss Arias' story, right? None
Mm-hmm.
of it was true. I was assigned to the case. I had to keep it. I had to tell her story. And there was a lot of internal stress in there. And I knew exactly once the diagnosis happened that was the reason. And that really made it all the more frustrating, in the sense that it wasn't a case I wanted or a job I wanted to begin with. But, it does highlight the fact that how much problems we can have in our health if we are miserable and living. Jobs can kill us, right? We can work overtime, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not just maybe the job itself. Maybe it's the things people do to cope with the job, right? Maybe it's the happy hour, the drinking, the smoking, drugs, whatever it is, right? I know Michelle Obama famously said that obesity is our number one problem. And I don't feel myself one to disagree with Michelle Obama, but I would say that it's unhappiness, because unhappiness can cause so many of these problems, right? The unhealthy eating, the smoking, the drinking, whatever, the list goes on, right? Because we're trying to find that moment of joy, whether it's in a hamburger or a sex addiction or whatever it is. So to
Yeah.
me, this is like working towards living a happier life is so important because of that disease and because of the consequences of it.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that, because you don't just become obese. You are searching for something that fills a void. And so it could be whatever it is that fills that void. It could be eating, it could be sex, it could be drugs, it could be whatever it is that you're searching for that fills that void, that's going to give you that pleasure that you think is going to lead to happiness. But what is happiness? We ask ourselves, right? What does happiness look
Right.
like? And so, we think we're going to go to school and we're going to get this dream job and it's going to be great and we're going to be excited about what we get into. But in reality, what do we get a job for? So we can make this money, so we can have a certain lifestyle. but what goes into that, right? And so, of course, when people are on the outside looking in, they see that, oh, well, you're on this case and you may be wanting this stardom or you may be wanting this, but no one sees what goes along with that, right? They don't know what you have to deal with. They don't understand the phone calls that you're getting. They don't understand what your children are having to deal with. They don't understand what your wife is getting taunted with and what stress comes with that. And so it's not as glamorous as it may seem to others that don't really know what goes along with that. And so I was asked one time, are you what your job is? And I believe this. If a doctor is a doctor, then that's what they are. You shouldn't be a doctor unless you are going to take that on wholeheartedly 24/7. And so sometimes it's like, well, when I'm not doing surgery, then I'm not a doctor anymore. Well, if you are a doctor, if you are walking down the street and you see someone sick, you can't say, well, I don't have my doctor hat on right now. I'm not going to be a doctor, right? But if you are in a situation where it's starting to wear on you and it's starting to become something that you don't like, and you see someone and you're like, I'm a doctor, but I'm not getting ready to be a doctor today because I don't feel like it. I don't care if they live or die. Then maybe you should think twice about the profession you're in. And I think that's the point that maybe you came to, as this isn't something that is appealing to me. It's not something that's conducive to my health. It's not something that's good for my family. It's not something that brings me joy. I need to look at a different lifestyle.
Well, ultimately, yes, because it wasn't something I'm going to enjoy. But I'm gonna give you something, you and your audience, something to consider when
Okay.
about, you said a lot there. So I want to go back to the first half of what you said about being a certain thing, being a profession, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever job you hold now, and I just generically, okay, I want you to think about the job you hold now. Did you exist before you held that job? Then you can't be that job. That job cannot be your identity. Will you exist after you quit the job and go on to something else? Yes. That job cannot be your identity. Now, I understand what you're saying about a doctor. You use a very particular example. You can't go, well, somebody's choking, I'm off today, right? I'm not a doctor today. But I think too many times we identify with our profession, and that's one of the things that blocks us from change. So, for example, when I concluded my career as a lawyer, one of the things I endeavored to do was become a life coach for lawyers, because I saw the stress, I saw the drinking, I saw the unhappiness, the divorce rates, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the constant themes that came up to me, and I think this is probably going to be common, whether it's doctors, dentists, everything else, is that there was so much value placed in that identity, that esteemed, so-called esteemed identity, right? And they wouldn't know what to do with themselves if they didn't identify with that, even though they're miserable as that, right? So I think we contain ourselves and confine ourselves to that identity. We go to cocktail parties, right? And we say, well, what do you do? Instead of who are you? What do you think about? What do you do? And we say, if you say, yo, I'm an accountant, and then you talk about that, but you're more than if you're an accountant, you're more than an accountant. You might be a family man. You might be a spiritual person. You might be, somebody who's into these or all kinds of other things, right? You're not just that. And you existed before you were an accountant, and you'll exist after. And if we begin to realize that all these labels we put on ourselves are transitory, I mean, nothing that I can think of off the top of my head is permanent. Life itself isn't permanent. Your existence on this planet with the name you have is not permanent. So allowing yourself to move forward from that identity, I think, is so important, because you get tied to it, and that's who you think you are, and you can't step away from it because you think everything you are is going to fall apart. I guess I would say that I'm living proof that that's not true. And that's, one of the mentors I mentioned earlier, Kyle Cease. He's in movies, he's got hit comedy specials, and he just stops and he reinvents himself because he's not happy. And now he's happy doing what he's doing. And we can all do that. Now, it's obviously, to some, they're going to say easier said than done. But I think it's easier done than said when we start making happiness our priority. Yes, as adults, a modicum of practicality has to be honored. We all can't quit our jobs tomorrow and burn all our bills and figure they're going to be done. But what are we seeing with COVID coming to an end, people going back to work? People are beginning to realize, I don't want to live my life in a cubicle counting beans for this X corporation and not enjoying my life in the way I did, maybe during COVID, enjoy my family, enjoy my passion. So I think that, that is such an important part about not being trapped by our identities, by evolving past them.
That right there is awesome. I love the way that you answered that and the way that you brought that, because I love to shake things up sometimes. And that is exactly what we needed to hear, because so many times people get locked down in this identity and they think that that's who they are. And you are correct. You don't have to be identified by that because you put yourself in a box. And I know that my husband and I are in ministry classes right now. And
Okay.
I'll never forget when we told people that we were in ministry, how many people walked away from us and are like, we stopped getting invited to parties. We stopped getting invited to all kind of things. And I was like, what just happened here? Oh, well, they're church people. Well, what are church people? I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? We're still the same people. We just do things a little bit differently now. But that is not all we are, and it's just like, God can use anybody on any level. But it's so funny because it's like, okay, now they identify us as those church people. And it's like we have the plague now. What are you talking about? We're the same people that we were yesterday. And so thank you for answering that question that way, because so many times people get put into a box and they get labeled. And I don't like labels. I don't like titles, and I don't like labels, because I might jump out of a box and do something weird or different or crazy at any time. And so thank you for saying that, because people need to understand that they are not tied down and identified. And you're right, with COVID and the way things have happened, people have to change now. My husband for 17 years worked in retail, and he worked as a manager in furniture. And he had open heart surgery, and he can't do that anymore. He can't go back into that business. Well, for years, he had wanted to start a business in finance and do these different things. Well, he's now had opportunities, been able to go back to school. And like I said, we're in ministry now, but he's been able to do these different things. And I say, thank God for the open heart surgery, although I didn't like the way that it happened. But because of that, it's opened up a door. But for so long, he was so confounded to this is what he knew, this is what he did, that it was hard for him to get away from it, And it's like, no, you don't, that's not who you are. You can do something different. And now he can't do that anymore. And I'm thankful, because now he has the opportunity to do what he actually
you
wants
have a
to
happier
do.
Husband now.
Absolutely. And that's what life is all about, finding that joy and having peace and being able to do something different, like you said. So thank you for sharing that, because people need to hear that.
And let me springboard off, because I think you said something real important there in your story about the your peer group kind of steering away from you, because I think that's one of the things that people fear, right? Like, if I go away, like I had so many friends that were lawyers, right? And once I was away from that, it changed, and the friendship started to fall apart. And that's one thing people fear, right? Is I'm going to stop this. I'm going to lose all my work buddies. This is my whole friends. But what people, and maybe you've experienced this now, or you're going to experience this moving forward, is that new people start coming in.
Oh, right? Yeah.
New people start coming in that enhance your life. And I have so many now, my lawyer friends, I love them. They're in their own world, and we still have a relationship. But I've got so many great new people, like I mentioned, the radical body transformation, right? These inspiring people that are into weight loss and everything else, and fitness, and such a great group, right? And then I have some friends I met through Sean and Kyle Cease, and just all kinds of different people, making a friend. If I was still lawyering, we wouldn't be here, right? And making a new friend.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of thing that people need to realize, that when all these other aspects of it too, they're going to work themselves out. People that lift you up are going to come along when you change your life, and it's really going to be to the good without degrading the other people.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I think that when you go to a different level in life, sometimes the atmosphere changes and people change. And someone did tell me that. They were like, when you change your vibration, sometimes things change and you just are going to have to get used to that. And this is proof right now because you're here and we're having this conversation. So I get it. And it's okay, because it's not that I don't have those same friends. It's just that I don't do some of the things that I used to do. And I think it's a respect type of thing. And I get that. And it's not a bad thing. I think it's just a kind of like a respect thing. But I think that they would understand that it's really kind of no different. It's just things are done a little bit differently.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm still the same goofy person that I always was. Nothing's going to change.
That's awesome.
So tell me about the body transformation and how you got involved in that. What brought that on?
Sure. Well, I tell you, it's kind of funny because I would joke in my one-man show sometimes about, so many people, going back to the Arias trial, so many people believed that I believed her story and all this sort of thing. I thought, well, I must have some untapped acting ability. And I started just kind of joking with that. And then it was one of those things I kind of got a little bit of calling and saying, well, why not? Right. And so I started, kind of looking for projects, and that got me to the point where I met the people from Radical Body Transformation, which is a fitness show. I wouldn't call it like The Biggest Loser, right? People think of The Biggest Loser, the weight loss kind of thing, but it's kind of like that, only maybe not as extreme. It's more like flabby to super fit. And I was really inspired by the founder of this, Anthony Lawley. He's got a great documentary called Fat Lolly to Six Pack Lolly. And he was a New York real estate investor and just very, very successful. He was on Fox Business all the time, talking about finances and real estate. And he eventually got to the point where he was well over 300 pounds, and he's like 5'7", 5'8", something like that. And he went on this huge body transformation. His daughter, I believe, sparked him to kind of change. And now he is competing in these bodybuilding type competitions, and so it was really inspiring. And so it was the opportunity to better myself, hopefully inspire some other people, and kind of have a bit of a TV presence in a different way. I love going on Court TV, Nancy Grace, all those true crime podcasts, but kind of going back to what I said earlier, I'm more than just that, right? I'm more than just a crime guy. I existed before I was a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. And I lost a whole bunch of weight between the two Arias trials through different methods. And after cancer, it became harder to gain my health back. Chemotherapy really wreaks havoc on the body. So I ultimately decided, okay, well, I'm going to get with these people. And I've been in this program about 6 months. It's really great. People can go to my website, kirknurmi.com. I'm sure I hope you post a link up there, and that'll to my coach, but so they can get more information if they want. But it's been really cool because it's been really simple. It goes into my phone. The workouts and a diet, a calorie intake kind of thing goes into my phone, and I just follow that. And I've lost over 30 pounds. I'm getting strong, and I think I always benefit from that connection, that body connection. Because like I write in Defend Your Greatness. I think if we don't take good care of ourselves, we're telling Source that we're not ready for the reason we're here. But when we take good care of ourselves, we're saying we're going to show up for our mission. It's like being at work on time and being awake versus hungover and not happy to be there, that sort of thing, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it. And so I'm connecting more to my body. I feel like that connects me closer to Source. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful process. Not simple. I mean, simple, but there's a lot of sweat equity involved, right? I mean, you see all these things, you're going to take pills and lose weight, all that stuff. No, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to get in there. And to me, this wasn't just about losing weight. It was about fitness for the for the later stages of my life, if you will, my AARP years. So, you know, and there's some great people on there. There's a guy 65 years old. You would not, I mean,
Wow.
he's six pack. So it's just been a really great experience with really great people. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, right? Some of those lawyer friends go away, but now I've got all these great, inspiring people with the radical body transformation community. So that's been really cool as well.
Yeah, and you said that airs on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. We're actually filming in a couple weeks, so people can follow me on social media, my Nurmi Unchained group, or Kirk's Court on Facebook, or me personally, Kirk Nurmi on Facebook. You'll see the links pop up and everything else like that. So, yeah, we're filming that in a couple weeks. I don't know when it's going to come out. My transformation that year won't be done until January. So, depending on the time frame, and COVID's been a real pain with that. The production companies in Toronto, they haven't been able to cross the border. So my before is going to be 6 months into it, and who knows when my after is going to be. But it's just been an awesome experience, and certainly be sharing that with you as well.
Okay, great. Now, I want to ask you about the soul energy, but before I do, I kind of want to ask you about how everything kind of affected your mindset.
Everything, but everything. What do you mean?
As far as between the trial and the cancer, what effect did it have on your mindset?
Well, I think ultimately, what I tell people is I'm not happy I got cancer. I'm happy I learned the lessons that cancer taught me, right? Because so many of us, I think, in our life, I don't know, how many people out there, maybe I'm the only one who ever sit there and really challenge themselves with that question, are you happy? And I do mean challenge, because it's so easy to say yes, because yes doesn't mean change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you challenge or confront yourself with that question, that could be the opening to change if the answer is no. And I began to realize the answer was no. And so if you're going to endure chemotherapy or heart surgery like your husband did, or whatever other people are seeking to overcome in their life, are you going to do that simply to exist, simply to avoid dying? Or are you going to do that to begin truly living and thriving?
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the mental shift, if I understand your question correctly, and this idea of what I call living with joyful urgency. I mean, so many of us think tomorrow's guaranteed, and odds are for most of us tomorrow will come. We will wake with the sun tomorrow. 4:30 in the morning for me, because I'm married to a teacher, but that will likely happen, but we don't know how many days we're guaranteed, and we want to have fun with those days and not be miserable. Like, people hate Mondays. I say, well, why hate 1/7 of your life, right? Because that, if you were dying on a Sunday, you'd be praying for a Monday. Okay, so that kind of thing, that just embracing life and really loving it instead of just going through for it, or waiting for those, that 2-week vacation where you go crazy and then you drag yourself back to work and hope for the next 2-week vacation, right? So it's that kind of thing. It's just that mindset shift towards joy. Like, why go through everything I went through or what other people are going through if you're not going to live a happy life? Why do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, so many. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like when that moment comes, I don't think I'm going to have too many regrets having shifted my life the way I have. And to me, that's ultimately it, because none of us are going to avoid mortal death. Our bodies are eventually going to leave this planet. And to do so, having learned all you learned and having lived all you lived and loved all you've loved, that's to me what it's all about. Not, listen, do you think I'm going to be able to sit there and on my deathbed and say, I'm a lawyer, I get 2 more years? No, it doesn't work that way, right? So I'm going to have as much fun as I can while I'm here. And that's what I'm up to. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think so many people don't realize that we all go through something. Everybody each day is struggling to overcome something. And it's a matter of a choice to make. Are you going to get up? Or are you going to just lie down,
Yeah.
and making the choice to say, I'm not going to just lie down. I'm going to get up and I'm going to make the choice to go on. That's commendable, because, you can't just lay there. That's the easiest thing to do. But going on, that takes effort. It takes
And
effort to get up.
also to lift somebody else up when they're
Yes.
doing it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so being an encourager, and I think for the most part, I really believe that's what we're here for, to help others, to lift others up and to encourage and motivate them. And that's part of this platform that I do, is to bring them on, to give them a voice. And I told you that, to give other people a chance to tell their story and to be able to have a voice and to show their talents and to say, hey, if I can do it, you can do it as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's powerful to show others that, you know, you don't have to stay where you are. You can always bloom where you're planted. So you had talked about this soul energy. I want you to enlighten us on that soul energy and what that means.
Soul energy. I don't remember saying that.
You did when we first started talking. You had said something about a soul energy when we first got on the phone on this call. You had touched on a little bit, and maybe you were just talking. You said something about a soul energy, and that sparked in me. And so it just stuck in the back of my head. You said something about a soul energy, and maybe it was just something that you mentioned.
I think you might have misheard me. I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, I promise. I thought I heard you say something about this soul energy. And I was like, I want to talk to you about this soul energy.
All right. Well, let's talk about what questions you have then, since I don't remember.
Well, no, I just remembered you were saying that you were finding your happy and your joy, and it's about a soul energy. And so I just didn't know if it was something like just a source of energy that was inside of you, or source energy. There you go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Source energy.
Okay. That's a whole different kind of energy.
Okay, so source energy. Enlighten me.
You want me to talk about? Okay, I will pontificate on that subject matter until I see you falling asleep.
No.
No, listen, I believe we all, and part of the reason we lift each other up, or should be lifting each other up, is I believe we all come from the same source. Whether you want to label that source God or Buddha or any other name, I think it's all the same. I use the word source energy because I think it's more universal. I think God can be a trigger word for a lot of people who maybe rebelled against religion to some degree. So I took it with this common. We have this ability, I think, and I think what I was talking about, tapping into source energy through meditation, through taking care of ourselves, through different activities, whether that's prayer, like I say, meditation is a big one for me, to connect to that, to kind of follow the promptings and urgings. I think when we become in tune to that sort of thing, when we start to believe it and start to be prompted by it, that we can begin to live a more prosperous life when we follow those leanings, right? And so part of what I think I was referencing when I talked about source energy was this feeling I was getting when I was contemplating that decision whether or not to go in the chemo chair or simply let cancer take me off the planet. And I felt like I was getting some of the nudging from source energy to keep going, that I had another mission. And it caused me to get on this whole method of reflection. Wayne Dyer has this great book, and I think it's a fun exercise for us to do. It's called I Can See Clearly Now. And I don't know if you're familiar with Wayne Dyer or not. He's a great spiritual teacher. And this book he wrote at the end of his life. And basically it's a retrospective, and he goes back and he talks about the different things, maybe things he wanted, didn't want to happen that happened, and everything else. And at this point in his life and his spiritual development, he began to look back and see why things worked out the way they did and how that became sensical to him in hindsight, right? And so when I began to do that myself, when I was getting these promptings, because sometimes we can be skeptics, right? When we get these promptings, it's really easy to be skeptical, especially if it's illogical, because we're trained to kind of be with what's in front of us and be logical, if you will, right? And so I started thinking, well, what about this prompting? And I started thinking back to this time in my life, and you cut me off if I'm yapping too much, but I remember back in I'm so old. I mean, I was around in the 80s, right? And I was trying to get into law school in the 80s. And I didn't get in. And it was just like, it was one of those, that was back, I was reading Deepak Chopra. I was trying to get into law school and I didn't get in. And it was so defeating. And I felt like I'd done everything right. And at this point in time, I'm not an overly spiritual person. And it was just defeating, but I felt prompts like I was working at a grocery store. I thought, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to be living here, working here the rest of my life. I quit, went to start working on getting a master's degree in history to try to get to become a better candidate to go into law school. And, I had to register for these prerequisites and ultimately having to take one of those prerequisite courses at a time of the day that was inconvenient for me to take it was the reason I met my wife of now 28 years. And I started thinking about all those synchronicities, and there's so many, right? I'm not going to, like I say, go through them all, for hours on end. But, you start thinking about those synchronicities and you start looking at your life in hindsight like that. You say, I'm glad that person broke up with me, or, I'm glad I got fired from that job because I got a better job. If we start having that perspective on the present, then the signs that source energy are giving us become more real, become more tangible, and become easier to follow. We become lesser skeptics of that feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I let guide me to different things. Like even this conversation with you, right? It was, this seems to fit. This feels good. I didn't know what it was going to be. You didn't know what it was going to be. You even confessed you had no idea who I was till you did a little more research, which is great. But, but you had that feeling. You said, yes, this is a guy I want on my show. And so those feelings guide us to having this wonderful conversation. We don't have to know how they play out. And in hindsight, we're going to know how they play out. So that's ultimately how I try to live my life, through the meditation, prayer, whatever you want to call it, contact with source, communication. So yeah, that's kind of my little take on source energy.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because you say source energy and I say spirit, and like you said, whatever you want to call it, but I'm led by the spirit. And that, again, whenever I am with someone or am speaking with someone, I always feel like it's spirit led and it's for a reason. And I know that it's always a higher power, a higher vibration that brings people together. And I feel like it's always a divine connection that unites us and connects us. And we all are connected. And believe it or not, if people want to or not, we are connected here on this earth and put here to better each other. And so I think that's why he keeps us here, this source energy or spirit and this power that connects us.
We're here to learn and grow, right? Learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And help each other in that growing process. I think, I always think about this life as a bit of a school in some way. Right?
Yes.
We're here to learn. Our soul.
My husband calls it a dress rehearsal. He says this is the dress rehearsal before the real show starts. We get a chance day after day that we wake up to get it right. Another chance to take a deep breath and to try to do it over and get it right. Yeah. And so, I think that what separates us is what can actually bring us together. And, 6 years ago, I started this business and I didn't know what direction it was going to take. And when I got certified in NLP and I was trying to tell people about it, and they're looking at me like I was crazy or I was some kind of witch doctor and like, what are you into? And la, la, la. And, and I'm like, okay, I apparently I've always been ahead of my time. But when 2020 hit and COVID came out and all of the anxiety and depression and mental health was starting to come to the forefront. Well, what a time such as this was. What I do came to the forefront. And so I was like, wow, right when I didn't think that this was going anywhere, everything that I had researched and all the things that I had set in motion, now is the time for it to come to play. And like I said, this whole podcast and everything that I'm doing, I think I'm froze. Okay, but everything that I was doing is all to come into fruition now. And so I'm excited that I didn't give up, because I could have easily gave up and said, this isn't for me and I'm not supposed to be doing this. But there's a time and a place for everything, and you just got to wait and you got to be patient until things line up. And so, like you said, you back in the 80s, you had to go back and figure out what you needed to do so you could get where you wanted to be. And now you're doing something totally different. But we're
Yeah.
always changing, and we've got to learn to reinvent ourselves. And we've got to learn that sometimes we've got to take a different route or do something different to find our happy place.
And why do you think, since we're having this conversation, why do you think so many people refuse to make a place happiness as a priority?
I think some of it is learned
Yeah.
behaviors, because I question that a lot as to why do we put ourselves on the back burner? Why do we feel like we can't um, take that happiness on because we feel like it's being selfish sometimes, or we feel like it's something that we don't deserve? And I don't think that that's true. I think that we're supposed to have it. I think we're supposed to have it in abundance. I think that we're supposed to enjoy this life, and we're supposed to take care of ourselves, like you said, and reap the benefits of those things. But it's a way that you go about doing it. And I think that
Yeah.
sometimes we worry so much about what other people are going to think about what we're doing or how we're doing it. But I was always told this: if you lift others up, then you will be lifted up as well. And so if you help others, in turn, you will be helped. But I think we get so involved in helping others that we miss the ball on helping ourselves.
That's to be true. One of the things I learned from Sean is, it sticks with me, is this idea that you got to put like the stewardess says, you got to put the air mask on yourself first
Mm-hmm.
before you can help others, right?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that came to mind that I think is so important, you talk about others and everything else, and I think judgment is such a big scourge in our society in terms of making that connection, right? We want to judge people on their political beliefs, or the
Mm-hmm.
color of their skin, or their weight, or their car, or their clothes. I mean, that stuff starts in, like, what, junior high, right? Maybe even grade school. You got the
Kindergarten.
wrong color shoes, or wrong brand of shoes, I should say, stuff like that. We start learning those things that aren't even real. They're just illusory, made to make us feel better. And we have this judgment that we cast on others and ultimately ourselves, because there's really no difference the way I look at it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when we start casting these judgments, we separate ourselves, and we don't really have the chance to evolve in the way we should, and learn in the way we should, and grow together in the way we should. So I just think, one of the things that I think is such a blessing to me in my life, and like, if there's one takeaway for everybody, this is, if you dial back that judgment a little bit, you might be surprised what you have the mental energy for, or the tranquility for, right? I heard a great thing the other day, that I want to share with you. This if when you hear someone's story, that gives you an opportunity to love them. And
Yes.
to me, that is so beautiful, because so many times we don't know another person's story and we insert judgment in them. But even if we don't know their story, if we realize that they have a story and they are working and they are struggling to overcome, that would give us the opportunity to love them.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And again, that's the reason for this platform, because when you get to know someone, then you can't say you don't know them, right? When you hear someone's story, now you know something about them, and that gives you an opportunity to like them and to stop passing judgment. And once you know something about someone, you're not strangers anymore, and now you have something in common. And so that's what can help us come together and bridge the gap and
You
make
bet.
humanity kinder, right?
You bet. You
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah. So, Kirk, how can people get your books? How can people get to know more about you and get more interviews with you? Or because you do podcasts too, right? You interview people.
Yeah, I co-host a podcast called Get Real with Robin. That's on Podmatch. If people are out there, look at Podmatch, or they can contact me through Facebook. But KirkNurmi.com is really the source for everything. I have a link to all my books. All my books are available on Amazon. My Radical Body Transformation, my coach that I work with, she's up there. There's a link to her up there. And my event calendar is empty now because of COVID. And I haven't started back up booking events yet, hitting the stage, because I'm doing some acting stuff right now that's keeping me busy. I actually get to play a character next month in Dallas too. I'm playing a senator, so I'm going to try to look distinguished for that. But yeah, they can see my events, my books, learn about my weight loss, and it's Nurmi on Chain on Instagram if you want to just follow me there in terms of events and books and different things I do. That's probably Instagram's probably one of the best places to connect with me. So Twitter I don't pay much attention to because I still get hate to this day, but that's fine. But those are really the places that people want to reach out, connect with me. And also, I should say on KirkNurmi.com, I have a My Fan Park account, which is a chance for people, if they want an inspirational video, they're going through something, they want some life coaching, they're going through something, they want a session with me, they can find that through KirkNurmi.com in the My Fan Park section. So we can have that connection there as well.
All right, that's cool. And also, we will put a link on the website as well if anyone wants to get to you that way. And we have a network of friends that we connect to. That anyone that does the shows, we have links to where everyone can connect and interact and get resources that way. So anyone that wants to find Kirk can always go to yourfullmindlife.com and find him that way as well. Thank you so much, Kirk. Is there any other nuggets or inspiration you would like to leave with the audience before we jump off of here?
You know what? I know you expressed some concern about the dialogue today. And really, other than say anything about myself, I want to say how impressed I am with you and how much I enjoyed my conversation with you. I think you're just a spectacular force of good in this world. And I'm just glad we got to spend this hour together. I really mean that.
Well, I sure thank you so much for being on here and hang out with me. Don't you leave yet I can get us out of here. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Mind Your Business. As always, you were created with a purpose. So go ahead and do something inspirational and inspiring with your life, because you can tap into that source energy, because you are here. You have a purpose. There is a plan for your life. No matter what you do on this earth, do it. Just get up and do it. Nobody and nothing is stopping you from being your best you. You're here, so you might as well be great. So go ahead and do it. Thank you for joining in. Join us back tomorrow. I'll be on again at 7. But before then, tonight, I will be on at 10:30. Mind Your Business will be on for Monday night mindfulness. So come on back so you can get a Monday night mindfulness meditation and get some more tidbits on how to be mindful. Other than that, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Kirk, for joining us. And remember, be kind to people, because you don't ever know who you might come in contact with, and you don't ever know who you might need to represent you in this world, because we all need someone to speak for us at some point in time. Have a great day and be blessed. Thank you. All righty. Give me a second and we will be out.